When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on.
Hello, welcome to You'll Never Walk Alone World. Welcome again. We are very glad to be here. Thank you to all the people that is watching. And today we have an amazing show. We are really delighted. We are really happy because we have a very special guest all the way from Liverpool. We have Jeff Goulding, who is the author of 5 Liverpool books. Amazing stories with the history of the book, with the history of the club, old history, but also modern history. 5 amazing books. So we're going to be talking about those books, and we're going to be talking about the club, of course, and about his career. So let's welcome Jeff Goulding. So should be, yes, there he is.
Hello.
Jeff, welcome.
Hello there.
Hello, Jeff. Well, welcome. We're very happy to have you here, to have you on the show, to finally be able to talk to you. And well, in this, we have the pandemic, but it's a happy times and happy era to be a Liverpool fan.
Oh, it certainly is. Arguably the greatest times of all. Despite all of the troubles that we've all had to share across the globe, really. But as a Liverpool fan, it's the sort of the end of a 30-year nightmare, isn't it? 30 years without the league title. And to see Klopp bring that home is just euphoric, really.
Yes, and exactly. I want you as someone who has always lived in Liverpool. You are a Liverpool fan from birth. So tell us, because we know fans from Mexico, from the States, from South America, from Asia, Africa, and maybe they don't understand the importance of the Premier League for the people in Liverpool. Because yes, we had Champions Leagues, and maybe in other countries the Champions League is more important. I don't know, but tell us about the importance of the Premier League title for the people in Liverpool.
Yeah, so I think you're right. There is a special affinity, particularly with Liverpool supporters, with the Champions League in Europe. We've always loved playing in Europe. We've always loved those adventures on foreign soil and welcoming great teams from across the continent. But the league has always been especially significant, and that goes back to the days of Bill Shankly. So Bill Shankly would say that the league is our bread and butter. The league is what we live for. It's what we fight for, because the league is about 38 games, and it never lies. The best team wins the league. So if you win the league, nobody can question your superiority. Nobody can argue. And so to have gone 30 years, despite the fact that Liverpool had won pretty much everything else, there was still a kind of gaping hole there in terms of winning the league and getting the 19th league title. It added spice when Manchester United went past our 18 league titles and achieved 20. That made us want it even more, really. So to get the 19th title is something that every Liverpool fan has dreamt of, for the last 3 decades, really.
Yes, and here we have a comment. Kao say hello from Thailand. So hello all the way to Thailand. And well, Jeff.
Hello from Liverpool.
Also, Great, and from Mexico City. But Jeff, as you say in one of your books, and it's true, this was the Holy Grail, the Premier League title, and we've been waiting for 30 years, and in Liverpool you've been waiting for 30 years to win it, and then, well, there was a parade prepared. The people, the fans, which are one of the biggest fans in the world, were ready for the party, but the pandemic happened. So how was the celebration in the city, and especially, well, for you? What did people do? How was winning this Holy Grail during this pandemic?
So I think in years to come, we'll look back on this with affection, I think, because I think we'll look back on this as something unique, perhaps the most unique and remarkable league title of all. Perhaps the only one that comes close to it is when Liverpool won the league title in 1947. That was the first league title after the war. But this is a very special title win to happen in those circumstances, to almost have it snatched from our hands and to come back and win it. I think that makes it even more special. How we celebrated it, well, most of us stayed at home and heeded the warnings. Most of us watched it on watched the City game on television. Some of us had barbecues and friends around, and so the celebrations were with immediate family, really. But in my own house, I sat out in the garden, and there was many of my neighbours were having barbecues and family gatherings, and clearly watching the City versus Chelsea game. And really, I was trying to follow the game on my mobile phone whilst listening to the cheers and the celebrations in my neighbours' gardens. And then a full time, was treated to the most spectacular fireworks show I'd ever seen, because literally every house in the area was letting off fireworks. There were cars. The people who lived near to Anfield, the people who lived near the ground, couldn't contain themselves, and many of those did pour out onto the streets, and they celebrated around the stadium. So, despite the lockdown, there was a massive party across the entire city.
Yeah, it was interesting. And well, here we have more. Sophie Sansai says, "You'll never walk alone." Arun, hello from India. So hello also all the way to India. But yeah, it was interesting. It's something definitely, it's going down to history. We're never gonna forget. I live in Mexico, but I was finally going. I said I have to go to Liverpool this time. So I have plane tickets, hotel, everything booked, and well, this happened. I couldn't be for the celebration, but it was interesting. I actually enjoyed it. I was just home with my wife and my daughter. We were watching the Chelsea game, and then I had beers here. We put all the Liverpool songs, Jamie Webster, and we were dancing here in the house. So something we're never gonna forget. But well, tell us first, quickly, before we go to your books, how did you become and when a Liverpool fan?
Well, so in Liverpool, you are either a Liverpool fan or you're an Everton fan. You don't really have any choice. And so, fortunately for me, my family are all Liverpool fans. So my parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, they were all Liverpool fans. I was born in 1967, but really I first became aware of Liverpool Football Club in 1974 when the team reached the FA Cup final against Newcastle. And my family didn't go to the final, but they were all around the house. The whole family were in the living room watching the final on the television. And kind of as a young lad, I'd have been 5 or 6 years of age, I was just mesmerised by their behaviour. I was mesmerised by how much it clearly meant to them, how they celebrated the win, how they celebrated every goal that went in. And then I remember seeing Bill Shankly on the television. And from that moment on, really, there was only ever going to be one football team for me. I was hooked. Went to my first game in 1976. Stood in a part of the old main stand, which was the paddock, which is a standing area. And really, fans on the Kop and listening to the fans on the Kop and their songs and the colour and the noise. And really my affection for Liverpool Football Club has just grown stronger with each passing year since then. And it's part of my life now. And I've been a Liverpool fan for more than 40 years. And many people in Liverpool are like that. You know, it becomes part of who you are. It's sort of almost in your DNA. It's what gets you through the working week. It's what gets you through troubled times in your life. You always think to yourself, well, there's always the game at the end of the week, or, you know, you meet up with your friends before the game and you stand on the Kop and you watch the lads playing football. And it's, you know, Liverpool means everything to me.
And now that moment of having the game and forgetting about everything, and that joy that Liverpool gives to the fans, it's now happening all over the world, in America, in Africa, Australia, Asia, everywhere. But well, you are a huge Liverpool fan, but also author of 5 books about Liverpool Football Club. 5 so far, because I bet there are going to be a lot more. But tell us, how did you get into writing?
So I've always enjoyed writing. So ever since I was in school as a young boy, I used to write stories. And I always dreamed of being an author. I thought I was going to write fiction. That was my dream. I would write fiction. But what I discovered around about 7 or 8 years ago, that writing about something I'm passionate about and something I love, seemed to come easier, seemed to be easier to do. And I started writing for a website called This Is Anfield. And the work I produced and the articles I wrote, they seem to go over quite well. People seem to enjoy them. So kind of snowballed from there. And then in 2017, Liverpool Football Club was 125 years old. So I had this idea to chronicle the history of the club with 125 individual stories from its history. And once I'd done that, I kind of got the bug, really. And I knew, you know, I knew I was going to have to keep chronicling the history of the club, but I wanted to do it from the perspective of the supporters. So I wanted to include in the book first person perspective of some of the greatest moments in the club's history. And then I've just followed on from there, really. So Red Odyssey 2 and 3 follow a very similar format to the first one, where we just get to see a social history of Liverpool Football Club, if you like, told from the perspective of the people.
So your first book was Red Odyssey, right? Can you tell us about this book?
Okay, so Red Odyssey is a series, as I say, it's a series of 125 individual stories. It starts off in 1892. Hello, are you still there?
Yeah.
So it starts off in 1892, when Liverpool, when in 1892 Everton Football Club was the major football team in the city, and there was a boardroom split and a falling out between the directors of the club, and that led to a split where John Goulding left the Everton board, or was removed from the Everton board. Everton went and set up their ground in Goodison Park, just across Stanley Park, and John Goulding built a new football team at Anfield, which had been previously the ground where Everton played. So the book starts off with that story, the story of the boardroom split, then Liverpool's entry into the Lancashire League, and then promotion from there into the second division, and then it tells the story right through till 2017. And really chronicles all of the major stories on and off the pitch. So all of the title wins, all of the cup final wins, some of the defeats, Hillsborough, Heysel, they're all chronicled in that book. And so it's kind of really a social history of Liverpool Football Club, with contributions from lots of different supporters, ex-players, and people who were involved in the club through the glory years.
Okay, and then you wrote Stanley Park. So tell us about that, because many fans maybe around the world don't know what's Stanley Park.
Okay, so really, Liverpool is a city that centres around two great families, really, the Everton family and the Liverpool family. And those two families, for much of their history, have been big rivals, fierce rivals, but hugely united off the pitch. And for much of the two clubs' histories, both sets of supporters have stood together or sat together in derby games. So when Liverpool and Everton faced each other throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Liverpool and Everton fans would stand together in the game and watch the game together. And it was known as the friendly derby for many, many years. That's kind of changed a little bit in recent years, derby. And in particular, after the Hillsborough disaster, the Everton supporters and Liverpool supporters really came together to support families and to support each other. And so there's a really strong bond between the two sets of supporters, and they have a very similar outlook on life. They have a very similar philosophy, very similar politics. But the one thing that divides Liverpool and Everton is Stanley Park, this patch of land in the city that separates the two stadiums. They are historically very close to each other. And so that gave me the idea of writing about two families who become divided by events. And so the book, but then reunite at the end. And so the book is actually a fiction. It's a novel, but it's based around two families, one red, one blue, and sort of tells the story of the last 60 years of the rivalry. Liverpool and Everton is the longest running continuous derby in English football. So there's been a derby on Merseyside since 1962, and so it gave me the opportunity to tell this historical story about two families, but weave in the history of the two clubs at the same time. And so that's what the book is, really. It's a story about two families, but it takes in the history of the Merseyside derby.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So you got to write fiction like you wanted, but it
in the end
sounds amazing. Yes. And then after Stanley Park, you had the second part of the Red Odyssey, but it's We Conquered All of Europe. So tell us about this book.
So when I finished Red Odyssey, I had a kind of unofficial deal with the publisher that we would come back and write Red Odyssey 2 when Liverpool Football Club were 130 years old. So I was going to wait 5 years before I wrote the next Red Odyssey. But then Jurgen Klopp won the European Cup. So it kind of, I couldn't resist the urge to sort of revisit it again. So we picked up from 2017, and we told the story of the Klopp era. Really, we sort of told the story of that era. That it includes the kind of the defeat in Kiev. It includes Basel, where we lost the Europa League. It includes the finals, the final we lost against Manchester City. But all the way through, it shows how Klopp was building and building and building, and how the atmosphere was beginning to change amongst the supporters around the club, and then it culminates in Madrid. And what I was absolutely delighted to have was input from people like Jimmy Case, John Barnes, Jamie Carragher, a host of Liverpool supporters who travelled across Europe throughout the whole period, who gave me their individual stories and highlights. And so really, that's a joyous book, because it's a book that is about the rebirth of Liverpool after a period of stagnation, and follows the same format as Red Odyssey, really. So and so what I hope I'm building is a body of work, really, which will go on to chronicle the club, until I'm no longer here to chronicle it.
Wow, that book's also amazing, and it was unbelievable, as you were saying, that after the Champions League, you had to do something. Yes, it was crazy. I remember as a Liverpool fan watching that Europa League, and then the other Champions League final against Real Madrid. Yeah, we lost, but you could see how club was building everything. And then that Champions League, the way they were playing that game in Anfield against Barcelona and then Madrid, it was crazy. And it was actually exactly there after that final that we said we had to do something, and we created You'll Never Walk Alone World, because it was an explosion, that final, that trophy.
Yes.
It's also
and I think,
an amazing book. Yes.
I mean, I think that is something that is kind of part of Liverpool's recent history. So almost from the late 1970s, when Liverpool won their first European Cup, Liverpool supporters began writing about their experiences. In Liverpool, there are a number of plays that you can go and see on the local playhouse, which are written by Liverpool supporters, which are about the history of the club. There are dozens and dozens of books that came out of that period, and there was an explosion of writers, playwrights, artists who were moved by the achievements of the club and moved by their connection with the club to go on and create. And I think we're seeing that again now. I think we're seeing an explosion in fan media, fan art. And you're an example of that, I guess. You're an example of that, wanting to express your connection with the club in any way you can. And you've chosen to do it via this route. But I'm just like you. I feel I have to express my involvement with the club in my writing. And it's a kind of outlet for that.
Yes, and it's amazing that nowadays, well, now with the internet, that we can watch even the games, the results all over the world. We see that explosion now in different places with people with different cultures, different religion, different ways of life. Like all the people here from India, Thailand, with Stephen, that you were with him from Texas a few days ago in his podcast. Yes. And it's amazing that we can now see and share those expressions all over the world, not just in Liverpool.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah. Liverpool as a city. Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say Liverpool as a city is like that. So Liverpool is a very multicultural city. So it's no surprise to me that people around the world identify with Liverpool, not just the football club, but Liverpool's art, Liverpool's music, Liverpool's sound, Liverpool's ethos and spirit. You know, Liverpool is a world in one city. You know, we've got the oldest Chinese community, we've got Somali community, Irish community. We are, Scousers are not English. They are citizens of the world. They are, to be Scouse is to be a citizen of the world, I think. And so it doesn't surprise me that we have supporters all over the world. And I absolutely love the fact that we have supporters all over the world.
Yes, and it's an amazing city, as you were saying. It even changed the history of humanity with music. I mean, the Beatles were from Liverpool, and but also Liverpool Football Club. I think one of the reasons why they have so many fans, of course, the way they play, of course, the titles, but it's much more than that. Is what the club represents, what Shankly started with the fans, showing that when you support this club, you will never walk alone. And it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you believe in. This club is about what this game should be. This beautiful game should be about union, about during those 90 minutes, just forget about your problems and not walking alone. I think that's why Liverpool is now a worldwide club.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. It's about everybody being part of it, everybody contributing and everyone sharing in the rewards. That was Shankly's philosophy.
Yes. Because I remember there's a quote of Shankly saying, some people think football is a matter of death of life, but it's much more than that. Well, I guess that it sounds funny maybe, but I guess that's what he meant. It's much more than death of life, because it's about unity. It's about that integration worldwide. But I think we lost Jeff there. Can you hear me, Jeff? Hello, hello. Well, let's see if we can get it back there. I don't know if Kimba is there. You can tell me if we lost Jeff or what happened. Do you know, Kimba? Well, we get Jeff back here. Well, these three books that Jeff was talking about, Red Odyssey. Is he back? No. Red Odyssey, Stanley Park, and We Conquered All of Europe. You can find them online. You can Google them. You can find them on Amazon. And let me see, Kimba, are you there? Can you tell us what happened? Oh, there he is. You're back, Jeff.
Hello, I'm back again.
Hello. Okay, Jeff, now tell me about your books. No problem. Well, you started writing these books, and these first three books. What has been the most satisfying and most amazing experience you've had about writing Liverpool books?
I think you can't get away from the fact that you write in order to connect with other people, really. It's partly about expression. It's partly about wanting to express yourself, but ultimately it's about connecting with other people. And so the feedback that I get for the books is incredible, really. Before the internet and social media, you wouldn't have got the kind of direct feedback that you get now. And although there's been some minor criticism, overwhelmingly the feedback for the book has been positive, and that gives me such an incredible lift, because what it tells me a number of things, really. It tells me that my experiences resonate with the experiences of other people. It tells me that that I'm doing justice to the club's history, that I'm telling the stories in a way that people appreciate. But also it's opened doors for me, so it's enabled me to connect with the club in a different way. So I've been able to connect with players, with former managers, former players, and to have conversations with people who were my heroes and who I never thought I'd ever come into direct contact with. But also it's given me a platform to speak to fans all over the world. That, the greatest thing I've done, in a kind of professional way, is to start writing, and it's changed my life in a lot of ways.
That's great. And these three first books, Red Odyssey, Stanley Park, and We Conquered All of Europe, how can people get them in the UK or also in other parts of the world?
So those three books are now widely available across the world. So Amazon is the obvious place. So in Amazon Mexico, you'll be able to buy those books. You buy them in Japan, anywhere. There's various. Amazon's not the only place to buy books, of course. The Book Depository is another place that will distribute those books free across the world. So you can get those everywhere, really. People could buy them direct from the publisher, so Pitch Publishing. So they go on to pitchpublishing.com. They'll be able to go into their shop and buy them directly, and they'll ship them out to you as well. Those books are freely available all over the world.
Okay, that's great. So after Champions League, we had this unbelievable season. Just the way the players were playing. It was winning game after game after game after game. The team, the union between the team was amazing. All the players, Jordan Henderson was unbelievable. And finally, really, really early in the season, we knew the Holy Grail was coming. So you wrote the third part of The Red Odyssey, which is now Champions Under Lockdown. So tell us about this book.
So yeah, so I've just gotten now into the habit of coming home from the game and writing about the game, and I sort of started to just jot down some notes very early on in the season, really. And you're quite right. I think the moment for me was when we got back from the World Club Championship and we played Leicester away from home, and that's normally a tough game anyway. And I kind of fully expected Liverpool to put in a poorer performance in that game. I wouldn't have been surprised if they won that game or maybe even lost the game. But they went out and they absolutely battered Leicester 4-0. And I think it was after that game that I thought something's happening here. So I kind of decided if we were going to win the first league title in 30 years, I was going to chronicle it. I was going to document that in some way. And so I contacted the publisher and floated the idea of the book, and they gave me the green light. And so really that book is kind of following a similar vein to We Conquered All of Europe and Red Odyssey. It's really looking at this season through the eyes of the spectators, through the eyes of journalists, broadcasters, writers, former players, and just really telling the story, telling how we started off really believing that we could go close again, but I think a few of us thought it was too much to ask that we'd be able to get to 97 points a game. We knew that if we were going to win the league, City would have to slip up, or we were going to have the most incredible season ever. And it turns out we had the most incredible season ever. So that book sort of tells the whole story on and off the pitch. It does also include some of the controversies around the club. So it includes the charity shield, the community shield at the start of the season, where Liverpool fans booed the national anthem, and there was a whole controversy around that. So I was at that game. I was in the middle of all that. So I give you a kind of real insider view of that happening and why it happened. And I talked to lots of supporters about why they did that. And then we go on throughout the season and we talk about some of the incredible moments that have happened. And it obviously culminates in some of the darker chapters, really, of the book, which are about the lockdown and the experiences of Liverpool fans during the lockdown, what it felt like to be in lockdown, and then the emergence from those dark days into the Project Restart, and then, how we won the title. And then what I've been very careful to do in the final chapter of the book is give voice to supporters all over the world. So I have comments from India, I have comments from the Philippines, from the United States, from Ireland, from Norway, from France, all over the world, really. If only I'd have known you earlier, you would have been in the book too. But I've got comments from fans. So I think the book really will stand as a kind of a testament to the time, really, and how people felt at the time and what they experienced and how much it meant to them. So I'm very, very proud of that, really, that I've managed to give voice to so many Liverpool supporters all over the world.
It's great. And we have more here message. Good stuff, Jeff Goulding. Oh, it's Stephen Wilson from Liverpool supporters in Austin, Texas. Hello, Stephen. Thanks for watching.
Hello, Stephen.
And Jeff, this book, is it already out or is out this month?
No, the book is out in the UK now. I don't think it'll be out in South America or in other parts of the world until a little bit later. Unfortunately, that's very frustrating, but that's just the way it is. However, the publisher, if you go onto the publisher's website, Pitch Publishing, you should be able to order copies of the book directly from them, and they have told me that they will ship the book overseas to people ahead of publication in those countries. So an opportunity to get hold of it directly from Pitch.
Okay. And when was the book out in the UK?
It came out this Monday, so it came out on the 10th of August.
Okay, so well, we're still under lockdown. So did you do something special or an event or something?
For the book, no, unfortunately, I am planning, hopefully, if the lockdown restrictions aren't increased or as long as they ease a little bit, we're planning a launch for this book and George Scott's book. George Scott is a former player who played under Bill Shankly, and I've worked with him on his autobiography. So we're looking to launch both of those books in October in Liverpool. But obviously that's very much dependent on what's happening with the pandemic.
Okay, I'm sure you're gonna have the launch that you and your book deserve. And now talking about George Scott, this player from the Bill Shankly era, the beginning of this modern era and this era that made Liverpool what we know today. And not just that, George Scott is an amazing guy. I've had the opportunity to talking to him on the phone. Unbelievable guy, amazing his story and all the stories he has, and such a nice guy. He could talk to you for hours, and it's just unbelievable guy. And I mean, he's what, like 76, something like that, but he's so strong.
Yes.
And he has an amazing memory. He uses Facebook and WhatsApp better than I do. Amazing guy. But tell us, you wrote also a book about George's story. Tell us about this book. How is it called? Shankly's Lost Boy.
So it's the Lost Shankly Boy.
Lost Shankly Boy. Okay.
That's right. So the book is a collaboration between George and myself. We've worked on it together. George is an incredible speaker. He tells the most wonderful stories. And sort of my job really was to capture those stories and present them in a way that told the story of George's life. So those who don't know, George Scott was one of Bill Shankly's first signings. So he signed him he was a schoolboy in Aberdeen. He was 15 years old, so he's a Scottish schoolboy footballer. And he'd actually been scouted and signed for Aberdeen FC. So he'd already agreed to join Aberdeen FC. But Bill Shankly invited him to Anfield for a trial. And so George, at the age of 15, travelled to Anfield in January 1960 and became one of Bill Shankly's first ever signings. And there's some wonderful stories in the book about how Shankly persuaded George to join the club. Because George was a shy young lad. He was worried about his grandmother, who he lived with in Scotland, and he said to Shankly, my grandmother will be worried about me if I come to Liverpool. She doesn't even know where Liverpool is. And Shankly said, well, tell her we're in the second division now, but soon everyone will know where Liverpool is. And so, Shankly, using his charm and his persuasion and his mastery of language and communication, persuaded this shy young lad to come travel all the way from Aberdeen and join Liverpool. And so George witnessed the birth of modern Liverpool, really. He saw firsthand how Shankly transformed the club from a team labouring in the second division with very little ambition. He rebuilt the training ground. He had a hand in rebuilding the ground, and he rebuilt the squad from the ground up. And George saw all that happen, and he met some of the most incredible characters and incredible people. And unfortunately, Shankly had to let him go 5 years later because Liverpool was a team full of established internationals, and there were no substitutes allowed in those days. So he really had no chance of breaking into the first team. But the book tells how Shankly had a hand in George's future career, guiding him until he played in South Africa. He played for Tranmere on Merseyside, and then helped him on into his business life in later life. So it's really the story of a young boy from Scotland who'd lost his father, lost his mother, and found a unique bond with the manager of Liverpool Football Club, who took him under his wing and guided the rest of his life. And George has kind of forged an unbelievable bond. I live my life by the standards that Shankly set. And whenever I wonder what to do, I think, what would Shankly do? So the book is packed with observations, stories, and I hope it gives an incredible insight into 1960s Liverpool and what Anfield was like at that time.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And it's a story that fans, you don't get to hear stories of players like George, that, as you were saying, they were part of the birth of the Liverpool that we know, and stories from a different era where it was all about passion, all about football. I mean, nowadays, all over the world, you see the transfers from young lads, 15, as you were saying, or 16, and they're already making millions. And back then, I don't know how much was the transfer for George, but I bet it was more for passion than the money.
So George signed as an apprentice, so there was no fee involved, and he was paid £6 a week.
Wow.
Which was probably, he was paid £6 a week. When he left Liverpool and went back to Aberdeen, he signed for Aberdeen in 1965, and Aberdeen paid £15,000 for him, which was a huge sum of money at the time. So he was clearly a great footballer. He just couldn't get into the greatest team in England at that time.
Wow, it's a different era, but the era that made Liverpool what as we know it today. And how did you meet George?
So George and I had been communicating online for a little while, and George had told me some of his stories, and he'd read one of my books. I think he'd read Stanley Park's Story, and he'd enjoyed the book, and he asked if we could meet up, just to have a chat, really, and for me to sign the book. And then we met up there's a hotel in Liverpool which is built and run by the Shankly family, so it's the Shankly Hotel in Liverpool. So we met there for a drink, and it was actually the day that Liverpool came from 1-0 down to beat Aston Villa. So we were kind of chatting in the bar in the Shankly Hotel and watching that drama unfold at Villa Park, when Andy Robertson equalised late on, and then Sadio Mane scored that, unbelievable last-minute goal. And the more I got to talk to George and listen to those stories, I just knew that there was a book there. I knew that there was an incredible book that Liverpool fans, but not only Liverpool fans, but football fans would absolutely love. And we left that. We parted company that day with an agreement to write his autobiography. And I went home and I rang the publisher and I just said, I've got a brilliant story. And they said, send me a summary, and I did, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's great. And when is this book out?
So George's book comes out in September the 21st. So we're really looking forward to that, and I know George is very excited about it too.
Yeah, he can't stop talking about it, and he can't wait for the book to be out. Yeah, but Jeff, and I mean, you've written this 5 now amazing Liverpool books. So Liverpool is part of your life, and we know, because you were talking about what Shankly means to the fans and to you. But what do you think about Jurgen Klopp?
Well, I think Shankly is such a huge figure in Liverpool's history. His influence is so massive, culturally and from a sporting perspective. Shankly is everything, really. So Liverpool fans tend to be very reticent about comparing anyone to Bill Shankly. Paisley obviously the most successful manager, won an incredible number of trophies in a short period of time, and he's up there. Joe Fagan's up there as part of the legendary boot room, and obviously Kenny Dalglish is a figure in the club's history that kind of elevates above the club, and he's almost a god. Liverpool supporters of my generation, but apart from those guys, very few managers since Shankly we've ever been comfortable to compare. But Jurgen Klopp, I think it's undeniable that there are comparisons to be made between Jurgen Klopp and Bill Shankly. Both men came in and transformed the football club. So Shankly, from a much lower base, it has to be said, Shankly took a club that was going nowhere and turned it into a giant. But Klopp turned a sleeping giant into the best team in the world. And he did it in almost the same way that Bill Shankly did it. He did, forging a connection between the manager, the players, and the supporters. And Shankly always said at a football club, there is a holy trinity: the players, the supporters, and the manager. The directors don't come into it; they just sign the checks. In fact, they don't even sign the checks. We write the checks. And Klopp's come in with that mentality. It's about me. It's about the players. It's about the supporters, and we're all in it together. And that recipe is what led to Liverpool dominating English and European football throughout the 70s. And I genuinely believe that if we can keep Klopp, if we can keep this squad together, then we can go on a period of domination once more. Because he has such a wonderful way of communicating. In the same way with Bill Shankly, when Shankly spoke, everybody listened. And there's a great photograph of Shankly where he stood on the steps of St George's Hall in 1971, and his arms are outstretched, and there's about 150,000 Liverpool supporters behind him. And that's actually after Liverpool had lost the FA Cup final to Arsenal in 1971. Yet the fans still turned out to welcome the team home. And Klopp has that. Klopp has that bond and that connection with the supporters, that even if he's telling us bad things and bad news, we listen to him and we take note of what he says. And I remember when, against Crystal Palace, right at the start of Jurgen Klopp's reign, we were getting beat and the fans were leaving 10 minutes early, which is just an anathema to Liverpool fans. You don't leave the ground early. But people were leaving the ground early because the team weren't playing very well. And Klopp publicly criticised the supporters after that. He said, I felt very alone. People were, why are you leaving with 10 minutes to go? We could still win the game. And I think at any other football club, the fans would have turned on him. But in Liverpool, we all said to each other, you know what? Klopp's right. Klopp's right. What are we doing? And he has that ability. He has that ability to talk directly to the supporters, influence the supporters, and he's carried us with him on the journey. And I think that recipe of togetherness, everyone contributing, everyone working together, and everyone sharing in the rewards, that was Shankly's mantra. That's the Klopp mantra too. So he's undoubtedly his own man. He's got talents of his own. But like Shankly, he's a great innovator, he's a great motivator, he's a great communicator, and he's a believer in collective effort and collectivism. And so for those reasons, I think Klopp stands shoulder to shoulder with Bill Shankly.
Yeah, I totally agree. And well, you as a Liverpool fan, personally in your life, what has been the most amazing thing that being a Liverpool fan has given you?
Well, it's given me a sense of belonging. It's given me a feeling that some people get from religion, feeling that you're part of something bigger than yourself, that you're part of a community, that you've got friends everywhere because you're a Liverpool supporter, that you don't walk alone. It's given me that feeling throughout my life. It's given me some incredible experiences at football matches. I've been fortunate, I've been blessed to be there for some of the greatest moments in the club's history. How lucky am I that my life coincides with 43 of Liverpool's 48 major trophies.
Wow.
So, I feel incredibly blessed to be part of all of that. And sort of on an individual game basis, I think, I saw the Chelsea game, Chelsea semi-final in 2005 at Anfield. What an incredible night that was. Dortmund game in 2016. Lovren scoring in the very last minute of the game to take us through in that game on the run to Basel. But there's been no greater experience for me as a football supporter following Liverpool than the Barcelona game, the Barcelona semi-final en route to Madrid. Go into that game 3-0 down with two of our best players missing. Andy Robertson going off at half-time, Jordan Henderson playing practically with one leg, 3-0 down to Barcelona, and for us to score 4 goals and win the game with Messi humbled on the pitch. I was in the Kop that night, and I'm not ashamed to say that I was crying a full time. There were people all around me crying. None of us could believe what we just witnessed, but every one of us was absolutely convinced we were going to win the final. And so, moments like that, really, that's what Liverpool Football Club has given me. For over 40 years, it's given me moment after moment after moment of sheer joy, really, and a feeling of togetherness.
That's good. And Jeff, finally, to all the fans in the UK, but also around the world, to all the Liverpool fans, please just send them a message.
Well, we've gone from being doubters to believers, and I see no reason for us to change in the club. And I think if we stay united, stay together, I think there's no limit to what this club and this manager can achieve. I think we can only look forward to great times following Liverpool. And of course, you'll never walk alone.
Yeah, of course. And Jeff, it has been amazing. And well, the people watching, just don't forget to get Jeff's books, Red Odyssey, Stanley Park, We Conquer All of Europe. Those are available worldwide now on Amazon or with a publisher. And of course, Champions Under Lockdown, and coming in September, The Shankly Lost Boy. So really, we have to read these books. And Jeff, it has been amazing. You are a wonderful guy. I'm really looking forward to going to Liverpool and meet you. Of course, going to Anfield, of course, knowing the city. But now I'm really, really looking forward also to meeting you and having a talk over there. Thank you very much, Jeff, for being here.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And well, thanks to all the people who have been watching. And remember that when you support Liverpool, you'll never walk alone. See you next time.